Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival live from the Trauma Center Studios, the place the Bucks, the Brewers, the Badgers, and the Packers all go to find out what they did wrong last night. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, baby. Welcome to a funky Friday here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center Studios, powered by the Recovery Room. I don't just trash on the teams after they lose. I try to give detailed perspective and analysis. I try to not be a super homer so that I can give the audience of the Sports Carnival something that they could really use, not just a straight homer take. We've got plenty of folks for that. I did get somebody on my Twitter account this morning, by the way, at the Sports Carney, say, because we're going to talk Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers, and all sorts of stuff coming up this morning, as you might anticipate. But I did have somebody mention, Chad, on Twitter, that because I'm such a shit talker, that I would actually enjoy it if Aaron Rodgers retired. So that way I could begin to trash on his eventual replacement, Jordan Love, because I've trashed on Aaron Rodgers so much on my quote-unquote award-winning radio show.
So this is the rumor that's flying around now, is that Aaron Rodgers, this is it? This is his last season. He's going to retire and go off in the sunset. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's what we're starting to see from a couple of folks on the Twitter sphere. Bill Michaels, our good buddy, who was on from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock statewide, he was tweeting out a bit of a retort to this last night, and we'll go ahead and get into all of this coming up this morning with the audience here on the Sports Carnival. Again, if you want to join in the program, we've got all systems go. Facebook, LinkedIn now, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, all of them at the Sports Carney. Jen Bank, I see that you're checking in. Top of the morning to you, baby. Can't wait to get into the fray because this is a big show, Chad. We will have a lot of Packer discussion, as mentioned. We'll talk a little bit about that piece of stanking awful that we saw last night between the Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears. This shit was awful. I mean, they shouldn't. This is not an NFL game. This wasn't even a CFL game. This was just bad watch football. But we'll get into that because Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington Commanders, embattled as he is possibly even more of an asshole. And as you've mentioned to me, Chad, a douchebag than we might have even thought that he was prior to some interesting reporting that has been done at the bequest. I'm going to tell you this, at the bequest of the NFL, because ESPN is the one that did this investigative journalism. And I don't want to spoil anything for you, but ESPN is not what we would call an independent investigative journalism hub. It's not. It's owned in large part by the NFL, if you will. And so this was done at the NFL's bequest. I can already see this. And it doesn't look good for Dan Snyder. Like, not at all.
Well, we already knew he was an asshole, but some of the things that are coming out is very douchebaggery. If you're hiring private investigators to investigate other owners, that's a real D-bag move, if you ask me. We already knew he was an asshole. That was established quite a while ago. It's pretty clear that most owners at this point, or at least it sounds like, want him out, and he's going to dig in. He's one of these guys that's going to dig in. Do you not agree?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And here's the thing, Dan Snyder's mentioned to many of his colleagues and associates that he will never, ever, ever sell the Washington Commanders. Now, the NFL might force him to transfer the ownership to his wife. I mean, that's a realistic possibility that's being floated out there, but I would be careful if I was Dan Snyder, because as powerful as you are, big guy, you are talking about 31 other billionaires who, if given the impetus, might, I'm not saying they would, but might go about some of the same kinds of protocols that Dan Snyder seemingly has taken. So we'll get into that. The University of Wisconsin Lacrosse's Eagles football team, Chad, we talked to UWL head football coach to open up our new Sports Carnival this Monday. The Eagles are on the road versus the Eau Claire Blue Golds. That game will be Saturday, 11:30. It will be televised here in Western Wisconsin. I'm planning a road trip up there to watch the Eagles take on the Blue Golds. It should be a really good game. The Eagles, of course, losing a tough one to Whitewater a couple of weeks back, and then coming roaring back last week against Stout. Should be in a good spot this Saturday, but it will be a big game for both the Eagles and the Blue Golds. So we'll talk a bit about that. Chad, we also have a very special guest coming up this morning on the program. This kid was a star, and I don't mean like a minor star, like, what are they? What are the quasars? I mean, he was a huge star. He was a quasar. He was a sun. I mean, the guy was like a star amongst stars. Bailey Kale, who helped lead the Central at that time, Red Raiders, now the Central Riverhawks, to their first Gold Ball State Championship in about 100 years, and is now, I mean, rising up the ranks of the music scene. He'll be jumping on with us this morning at about 8:30. And Chad, we've got a lot of Bailey Kale songs that we're going to kind of introduce. We've been playing at least one of them so far this week, and that's one of his newest songs that he just released. But Bailey Kale will be joining the program coming up at 8:30, and Bailey might just be a fairly regular contributor here to the new Sports Carnival, Chad, because this kid, I mean, great at music, but he has still got a really sharp mind for basketball. And of course, the NBA season, the Milwaukee Bucks, the champion Golden State Warriors, who have got a little issue bubbling up under the surface with Draymond Green. The NBA season's going to start in a couple of days.
Man, this is my favorite part of the year, right? Because you're right in the heart of football. You've got baseball, the playoffs going on, and then the NBA starts. And if you like hockey, you got hockey going, I guess, as well. I can't keep track of that myself personally. I watch a little bit. You know one thing about sports to me, that's one sport you really have to be there to really enjoy. You know what I mean? I think like basketball, you can be in there is cool. Watching on TV is cool. Hockey, it's much better to actually physically be there.
No question. And, I worked in pro hockey for half a decade. It, to me, is of the four major professional sports in this country, and we're not counting soccer just yet, but of the four major professional sports, it is the one that's nearly wholly dependent on being able to watch it live. I mean, it really and truly is. The game has gotten better through the years as far as transitioning to television, but it needs to be seen live. The best thing to see on TV, and probably the worst thing to see in person, is football. I'd rather watch that thing on TV. I mean, I love the party. Yeah, I want to see the game on TV. Give me cut screens. There's 11 minutes of live action in a football game. And last night for the Bears and the Commanders, there was like 3 minutes of live action. All right, boys and girls, stay tuned. Sports Carnival broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios back in 30 seconds. I can't imagine a week going by without going to the Recovery Room Bar and Grill, 7th and Mississippi Street in downtown La Crosse. I'm serious. If you know me, you know that my favorite restaurant, not just my favorite bar, but my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, is none other than the Recovery Room Bar and Grill. Whether it's their burgers, their pizza, their wings, their gyros, their prime rib, or their fish, it's all good. And the wait staff, my gosh, some of the friendliest and coolest people that you'll ever meet. Matt, the owner, great friend of mine. The Recovery Room, 7th and Mississippi Street. I can't go a week without it. How about you?
Now back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival. You know, if life were like a box of chocolate for dogs, they'd all be dead. Here's your host, Dave Carney. A little dark for a Friday. I apologize.
Hey, man, that's cool. The Cooley Region Humane Society's like, no, don't give dogs chocolate.
Yeah, I don't mean that. I'm just saying. Just point it out.
Hey, listen, you are right, which now I've really got to think about that show BoJack Horseman, because one of the main stars of BoJack Horseman was Mr. Peanut Butter, and I feel for Mr. Peanut Butter. I don't want to see him take a wrong turn. Hey, thanks so much to the great sponsors here of the Sports Carnival Chat, our friends over at the Midwest Mortgage Team, the official mortgage lending partner of the Sports Carnival, Preferred Insurance of La Crosse, your auto, home, life, flood, and business insurance provider, and Kyle Cable, One Trust Real Estate. If you're looking for a new home, or perhaps you got to move off of yours right now, call our buddy Kyle Cable. Also, the Recovery Room powers the Trauma Center studios. I also want to throw this out here. We've got a new supporter to the program, Chad, this week. That is Helping Hands Landscape Service. Our good buddy Morning Joe Sampson, proud owner and proprietor of Helping Hands Landscape Service, is now a supporter of the Sports Carnival. Joe, thank you very much for your support. I saw that yesterday. Joe and Jimmy the Haggerty, another friend of the program of Stone Distribution fame, were going back and forth. And we love this, guys. We want you to get back and forth with each other. Again, the P1 fan club that we sort of developed here in La Crosse, Wisconsin, Chad, they became their own subset of friends. And I want to continue to interact with those guys, but let them do it amongst themselves. Ray Bryant is checking in this morning from Lost Wages, Nevada. And Ray,
what's up, Ray?
To you, fella. Ray has called you, Chad, the white ghost, because you're just fucking MIA. Chad 6 years ago drops off the scene and then pops back up like morning wood.
Ray, do I still look fat? Or I've been trying to do this thing with my chin to try. That's why I'm hiding behind this microphone. But you know what? It's good to hear from Ray. I love Ray. I still wear my Sahara Coins t-shirt and sweatshirt. I'm a big fan and big proponent of precious metals. And if you ever need or are curious about precious metals, Sahara Coins, granted, I know they're in Las Vegas and you guys are in Wisconsin, but they can mail things. They can send it out. You can go to their website.
Listen, numismatic coins, now more than ever, we're looking at sports memorabilia, numismatic coins, some antiques, firearms, things like that. The prices of these things are just going through the roof. And yeah, Sahara coins and precious metals, check them out online on Sahara in Las Vegas. And I just love seeing Ray's name pop up.
Washington Apple, I look like.
Hey, yeah. Listen, you asked Ray if you still look fat. You look great, by the way. You look awesome. Do you know who else looks really awesome?
Who's that?
Ray and his wife. Dude, Ray is lost. I mean, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate, but Ray Bryant looks like a completely different human being now than he did when we left Las Vegas 6 years ago. And so does his wife. The kids look great, Ray. I know that we can't get into too much of this right now, but it's nice having you aboard. And again, Sahara coins and precious metals. That's a shameless free plug. I see that our good buddy Jason P1 Breacher is checking in here this morning. Says Dan Snyder has that potential to be the slow poison pill that will just keep infesting the NFL. Breacher, great transition, because that's exactly where I want to start this morning. We got a lot to unpack, guys. Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packer football. The Badgers are against Northwestern and the Eagles against the Blue Golds. But let's start here, Chad, and bring up this first graphic, because there's been a big expose that ESPN had basically been prompted to carry out, which I don't know for sure, but I believe was at the bequest of the NFL. If it isn't, okay, then I made this up and it's just speculation. All right. So I don't know that to be true, but I have a sneaking suspicion the NFL's like, look, we need some help with this fucking guy, because like Jason Breacher, P1 Breach mentioned, Dan Snyder could be the slow poison pill that ruins everything for everybody. Chad, you're amongst the sports conspiracy theorists in some respects, and you've long held out that the NFL is kind of jerry-rigged anyways. If Dan Snyder really did have a lot of dirt on owners, that could be a problem, like a real problem. And I don't know that NFL fans would really want that to be exposed truly, because they love the game. And this is what I think the NFL and ESPN is trying to sort of push back on here.
Well, the thing that I'm not a Dan Snyder fan whatsoever, but the one thing that he did say that I do kind of agree with, because if you know the history of the NFL is a mafia. Well, kind of. It was started by the mafia back in the day, right? The first 8 teams were basically all part of that. I mean, it was all about gambling. That's why I always was pissed living in Las Vegas and how they always shied away from gambling, when in reality, the NFL was started and founded on gambling and is successful because of gambling. Now, recently, they've obviously put their arms around that. But I think to a degree, he's right about that. I think he's going about it the wrong way. And I'd be curious to find out what dirt he actually has. The one guy that he has that is in his corner says he has the most dirt on is Jerry Jones.
Yeah, and Jerry Jones has been one of Dan Snyder's most ardent supporters. For what reason? I don't know, but maybe Dan Snyder does know why Jerry Jones is such an ardent supporter of his. The ESPN article, which what I would encourage you to read when you've got some time, because it'll probably require you to sit down for 15, 20 minutes and sort of go through this thing. But the ESPN article that we're referring here to now, which you can see on screen if you're watching us here on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Twitch, says that now that Dan Snyder is facing investigations on multiple fronts, Chad, according to sources running out of his high-powered allies, now he's beginning to possibly feel himself painted into a corner, and has been telling some of his associates, at least according to the ESPN sources, that, quote, the NFL is a mafia. All the owners hate each other. Now, one veteran owner, Chad, and I thought this was a very good retort. One veteran owner said, that's not true. All the owners hate Dan. I can also see that. So while Dan Snyder's calling this a mafia, and Chad, you're right. George Halas, the Bears owner, which largely was a funder of the Green Bay Packers in early years, and some of the other cohorts, they definitely wanted to see gambling be a part of this. But I think that that's changed quite a bit now, right?
Sure.
I don't look at the NFL as a mafia of sorts now. This is a huge, huge business. But I do think that it's interesting when you say, we don't hate each other, we just hate this guy, which, Chad, makes me start to wonder, at what point do 24 of the NFL's 32 owners, which 24 or 32 is what it takes to remove an owner from ownership based upon a number of different legalese that we won't get into now. But I do wonder, at what point do 24 of these 32 owners not come together and say, look, we've got to press full stop here? Because if this guy, what if he actually does have something on him? We got to get rid of this dude, and now silence him, put an NDA out there, and lock this baby up.
I can imagine there's got to be something there, right? I don't think he's just blowing smoke. He may be blowing, more smoke than there is fire. But, I find this interesting. So James Haggerty, our buddy James, is checking in. He says, as a Packer owner, Dan Snyder doesn't have shit on me. So actually, that's interesting to think about because the Packers are owned by you guys, basically, right? How does that work? How does that work as far as their vote on Dan Snyder?
It doesn't. It has zero balance, and it doesn't mean anything at all. The Packers get to raise money, and they sell stock certificates, which are a great souvenir. Okay,
right.
The folks have no real ownership. They get to go if you do have Packers stock, you get to go to an ownership meeting, which is really a council meeting, and I think you get some sort of non-representative vote. Look, Jimmy, you're right. Dan Snyder doesn't have shit on you. And besides the fact, Dan Snyder would want to hang out with Jimmy. I mean, like, that's the thing. Dan would be like, well, I don't want to blow this guy up. I mean, then the party next Saturday is out of the question. So, Jimmy, you're in a good spot. You're safe there. But not everybody's as fun as go lucky. And not everybody, Chad, has the dreamy blue eyes of Jimmy the Haggerty of Stone Distribution fame.
But he is correct in the sense that there isn't one figurehead owner like there is with other teams. So I'm just curious on how that would work as far as, like you said, 24 out of the 32. How do the Green Bay Packer, conglomerate fit in there? How do they vote? How does that work?
To be fair, I don't know. And I think that would be a question for somebody probably a little bit higher level. Maybe we'll ask Green and Gold insider Joe DeGuano about that next week, because I think he might know to a degree that I don't. Look, Mark Murphy is the president, which is the acting owner, if you will, of the Green Bay Packers. He makes the quote unquote ownership decisions, but there is a board, and the board tells Mark Murphy in a lot of ways what to do. I would assume that the Packers would have to be a team of to abstain. I would assume that. So we would count that as one of those non-24 teams. So if we know that there's 24 or 32 that need to get it done in order to remove Dan Snyder, if in fact that's possible under a number of the different legal guidelines, I guess the Packers would probably abstain. I'm not sure though. That's a good question.
So what I've seen, and obviously we don't know solid numbers, but I'm guessing there's probably around 15 so far that are probably on board. I don't think they're that far away, if they're actually out there trying to get numbers to get to 24. Do you? I think they're closer to, let me put it this way. I think they're closer to 24 than they are the other way.
Absolutely. And really where I think this goes, if you're just joining the program now, we're talking Dan Snyder. The Washington Commanders and Bears had an awful game last night, but the Commanders are in trouble for a number of reasons, as you've probably heard over the last year. With this Dan Snyder case, it's also, Chad, not just about him being a bad guy or having dirt on other NFL owners. It's about possible financial malfeasance. Now, part of that, investigation about the Washington Commanders that ended up getting John Gruden fired was about whether or not Dan Snyder and the Commanders were withholding revenue from the owners. And that's something that, according to the lawsuits that are out there, it feels true. It hasn't been fully adjudicated yet, but the principal that made that particular witness statement, did so on the stand and did so, under oath. I feel like Washington, if there is enough financial impetus to see him removed, along with the personal impetus, it won't take a lot, right? You might have a couple of holdouts, and I don't know who those would be. Maybe the Rooneys don't like to see somebody gone because they're an old-time family. Maybe the Maras for the New York Giants don't like to see somebody gone because they're an old-time family. But I doubt that a guy like Shad Khan of the Jaguars is super happy to have him around. I mean, the NFL's changing quite a bit. So I think you're probably right. Closer to 24 than further away from 24.
Well, I guess the other thing would be, what cards does Dan Snyder, what is he holding? Does he actually have any information? And maybe a couple of owners that we would presume to be against Dan all of a sudden are for Dan. And then we might go, I wonder what Dan knows about A, B, and C. And will we ever hear that? Or, I don't know, it's just so hard to read this situation. To be honest with you, I hate to be like a little 12-year-old schoolgirl, but I kind of want to hear some of that dirt. This might be kind of fun. I mean, I don't want to blow up the NFL, but I'm curious to know what Dan has on Jerry Jones, for example.
Listen, I don't want to blow up the NFL because I love it, and we've made a decent living off of the NFL through the years, but I'm a story guy, okay? And I'm a content guy. I want the content. I want to hear it all. I don't know when we'll get to hear it. I don't know if we'll ever get to hear it. My thought is this, that all of these folks that we're talking about, the 32 of the richest people in the world, will collectively bargain, to whatever degree that is, to keep themselves out of hot water. At least that's my initial feeling. I've also got a feeling that we're getting some new audience members. Kurt Scott and Penny Now, they use the same Facebook page, but Kurt, Scott, and Penny are a couple. Kurt, Scott, Penny says they're checking out the show. Thank you very much, guys. Great to have you aboard.
And I apologize if you hear that in the background. The garbage man is here, and if you're hearing noise, I apologize. I can't control that. The garbage man gets up early around here in the state of Washington. So anyway, this kind of reminds me a little bit, not exactly, but a little bit of the Dodgers situation a couple years back with, I can't remember their name. What was it? McCourt?
Yeah, it was the McCourts, I believe. Yeah. Yes. And so then the other question would be, so let's say they vote and they want him out. There still has to be a buyer, right? I mean, you mentioned maybe it goes to his wife, but how does that work? There still has to be something, and we're talking about lots of money. It's just not like you can, put it on Craigslist. It's not going to work that way. Yeah, not specifically, not since they got rid of adult Craigslist. That's what Dan Snyder had originally wanted to post it on, which turns out, Chad, ironic little left turn. That's where Deshaun Watson was looking for another massage therapist. And now the 26th lawsuit against Deshaun Watson has now been filed. This guy, look, and there's another fucked up ownership group, the Haslams, right? Isn't that who owns the Cleveland Cleveland Browns? This guy, Jimmy Haslam, is another arch criminal who was nearly indicted for financial malfeasance. Yeah, the NFL might not be owned by the greatest guys. Maybe there's not the greatest guys that are at the top and even in some of the ranks.
Well, let's be honest. You and I have talked about this before. If you're in the billionaire club, more than likely, somewhere along the way, you had to be an asshole, you had to be a dick, and you had to possibly do some things that are shady. It's just the way the world is. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be a billionaire. I mean, would you agree with that? I don't think too many billionaires are saints by any stretch of the imagination.
So when you say probably, I'm going to move that off. Unless you happen to listen, here's the one person that might not be that big of an asshole. Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, who did one thing, marry Jeff Bezos, and that's all.
Smart move.
And so now she's the second richest woman in the world. So I don't know that she's a bad person. She just happened to be gifted enormous sums of money. But yes, if you're out there actually, so Jeff Bezos, for example, he was actually the inspiration for what was that? Austin Powers. That was Dr. Evil.
Dr. Evil.
Actually, Jeff Bezos was the future inspiration for Dr. Evil. We all knew that at the time. We just didn't want to say that because we enjoyed our Kindles. You used to read one. It was very rewarding.
I still have that. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm not gay, but if I was to go gay, I would have married Jeff Bezos. That's who I would have married.
It's a good call.
Because if you're gonna have to have sex with somebody you don't really want to, you might as well get paid for it. Yeah.
As I think probably. Well, boy, man, how personal do I want to get with this one? Interesting. Hey, Chad,
too far.
No, it's not too far. We all know that's true. I'm just thinking about myself. I'm like, oh boy, think about all the unhappy times people have had to look at me and like,
Here, before you switch, we got to get Morning Wood on here. This is great. Which is another great transition. Maybe someone can funnel welfare money to purchase the Washington Football Club. Good call, Morning Wood.
That's our man. Morning Wood popping right up, just like he should.
Well, you're talking gay sex. Morning Wood always comes up, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, at least nowadays, what's your pronoun going to change to? You got any ideas on that one?
Yeah, no, I am now, instead of, so you can pick your own pronouns. I'm picking my own adjectives. I am now known as Handsome Chad. So
nice.
From moving forward, that's what I want to be known as. You can pick your own adjectives now. It's not pronouns.
Handsome Chad. I've told people many times I would like to be referred to and treated as Irvin Magic Johnson. When I go to the Staples Center, now the Crypto.com arena, I want to be walked in. I want that front seat. I want Jeannie Buss to give me a hug and a kiss. And I really don't see why that should be a problem. I'll
tell you what, after watching Winning Time, which we know isn't necessarily 100% accurate.
Yes.
Magic Johnson in the early 80s had a pretty good life. Now, he had for it later on, but he had a pretty good life.
Listen, Magic Johnson still has a great life. Think about this. Magic Johnson, the day that he announced that he was going to have to retire, it was like a funeral in my home. All right. It was the start of the NBA season. I'll never forget this. Yeah. I got back in from playing basketball. It was like a funeral at my home. This is how powerful Magic Johnson is. HIV went from a death sentence to once a day pill. Once a day pill. and you're good to go. Chris Rock called this years ago. He was like, at some point, because we know that there's no money in the cure, the money's in the comeback. He says at some point they'll just have it to where like, I got to be out today. My AIDS is really acting up. That's what Magic in a lot of ways did.
AIDS is acting up.
Seriously, it went from a death sentence to once daily pill. I'm so excited about that, but it was really Magic, that put that in the forefront. But I would love to be treated as Magic going in to the crypto.com arena. All right, now let's do this. Let's change gears. Let's go back into some Green Bay Packer discussion. Okay. Packers and the Jets this Sunday at Lambeau Field. The number has moved way down. Green Bay opened up as a 7-point favorite. They're now looking at about a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite, depending on where you want to look. But I want to talk Aaron Rodgers, Chad, because
okay, hold on.
We got that coming up. But I want to talk because we got the game on Sunday, right? But we've also got a story that is emerging right now. Our good buddy Bill Michaels, who you can follow on Twitter, Bill_Michaels, was tweeting about this last night. I picked this up from Bill's Twitter feed last night. You can see the tweet on screen now. If you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Twitch, if you're listening to us, I'll just kind of give it to you like this. So Michael Balco, who is a podcaster here in the state of Wisconsin, covers the NFL. He's officially verified on Twitter as well, who does actually go inside the Lambeau, experience and gets to report on these games, speak to players, says this on Twitter, and this has been picked up since by Yardbarker and MSN, so you can find this article out there. He says this on Twitter: I've spoken to some people within the Packers organization, and they've told me that Aaron Rodgers has, quote, made it clear, Chad, that he plans to retire following the season. Now, while the Packers and Packer fans are decidedly focused on this upcoming Jets game and getting this team right, we've got to take a little time to at least explore this, because this would be a bombshell. Now, Bill Michaels, as I've mentioned, he tweeted about this yesterday and said, very interesting. I have a lot of trouble believing that Aaron Rodgers would walk away from the Packers and leave them on the hook for all of the money and the financial crippling that it would do to the team for seasons to come. And to Bill's point, Chad, I looked it up this morning. If Rodgers retires or the team decides to move on from him after the 2023 season, they'd still be saddled with $68.205 million in a dead cap hit in 2024. So to that end, I tend to agree with Bill Michaels, and I tend to agree with just the financial sense that this all makes. I can't see Rodgers. I can't really see him doing that to the Packers. I know that seems trite because we're like, well, they're athletes and what do they really care? But when you sign a contract like he did last offseason, that essentially locks this team up with all of that money, say what you will about Rodgers. He's not always my favorite off the field guy. I don't think he would do this.
Well, I'm wondering where this is coming from, though. I mean, we've had a little bit of dust up about Aaron Rodgers and rumors, pretty much before the season. Now we're having it within the season. They're struggling a little bit. Is that why? Because they're struggling, because he's not real happy with his wide receiver core? Where's this coming from? I mean, there's got to be something to it, right? I mean, at least I would think. Or obviously, we're maybe giving way too much credit to Michael Balco. I don't really know the guy. But if he's in the locker room and he's hearing this, is this coming from his teammates? So even if it isn't true necessarily coming from Aaron Rodgers, why are his teammates saying this? Are they not happy with him? Do they want him to go? I mean, am I reading too much into it?
And this is where we have to live in the world of speculation. I don't know Michael Balco myself. All I know is that he's got nearly 10,000 Twitter followers. He's officially verified, and he had this story picked up. So is it players, Chad, or is it people in the organization? And what does that mean? Is that the janitor, right? Is that the guy that fills the vending machine? What do we mean people within the organization? Which is why it's very hard in certain cases to sort of, over-report these particular tweets, because this isn't journalism, not to the degree that we would have had journalism before. This didn't pass through an editorial board. This is something that somebody's hearing, quote unquote, and then putting out on Twitter. So I don't know where this really comes from. I see Kurt Scott is checking back in here and said Rodgers wouldn't leave the money on the table. I know you wouldn't. Fuck no, I wouldn't. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't leave anything on the table. If there's $20 on the table, Uncle Dave's picking that up. No, I'm not leaving any money on the table. And Kurt, I don't think, and this is kind of what Bill Michaels, our buddy, was talking about on Twitter as well. I don't think that Rodgers would do that to the team. And I don't think that it has to be because Rodgers is just a team guy and doesn't care about himself. No, there's a legacy play here. Rodgers is never going to win the Super Bowls that Tom Brady has. He's never going to win the Super Bowls that Joe Montana has, right? if he can tie Peyton Manning and Eli Manning, he would be a very lucky guy. And the Packer fans that I know would be extremely grateful for that. But in my estimation, Aaron Rodgers now has to reset this so that it's a legacy play, right? Like his legacy is now going to be as the greatest Green Bay Packer quarterback of all time. And if he gets to another Super Bowl, wins another Super Bowl with the stuff we talked about with Brett Favre already this week, he will be elevated to that greatest Packer quarterback status. But he's never going to beat those other guys in terms of NFL greatness. So that's another reason why I don't believe that Aaron Charles Rodgers would make this particular play against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I think if Eli would say, join the club. Join the club.
Oh, man, look at Eli. Poor Eli getting shade thrown at him at 8:30. All right, we're going to take a break for about a minute. When we come back, we're anticipating talking to former Central High School star Bailey Kale here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Stick around. Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices. The official lending team and mortgage partner of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial. You know I like to tell a joke or two and play around, have fun. But getting a mortgage is no funny business. Don't play around with your finances. Call my good friends Michael Garcia and Todd Vercuse of the Midwest Mortgage Team at Land Home Financial today. Whether you're buying your first house, maybe you're buying your second house, maybe you're a seasoned real estate investor. Midwest Mortgage Team, Land Home Financial, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercuse. Give my good friends a call today. They're the official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival.
Now back to the Sports Carnival live from the Trauma Center studios. Here's the guy who looks like Jeff Bezos, but without all that pesky money. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, without all that pesky money to weigh me down, right? It's hard when you're walking through places with satchels of cash like we used to see Floyd Mayweather's bodyguards do, right, in Vegas. Homeboy comes in and he wears a backpack, and the backpack's strapped to the front of him, and it's just got a whole lot of money in it, and he peels it out. Just peels it out. I wouldn't want to be burdened with that, Chad. It seems like too much.
That is an interesting story. So our buddy Michael Mack at Max Pond there in Las Vegas used to have Floyd Mayweather come in, once a month?
At least.
Once a month, and there would be 3 Bugattis. And if you don't know what a Bugatti is, it's about a $350,000, $500,000 car.
$1 million worth of cars in the parking lot right there.
One would be in front of him. He'd be in the middle car. One would be behind him. And he'd have these big dudes that one of them had a backpack on it. And I believe Michael said, and I'm, not that Michael's telling on Floyd, he had around $500,000 in there. Cash.
I think he does that all the time. Floyd, from what I understand, right, living in Vegas, and I've actually had a chance. We've seen Floyd a couple of times out and about. But from what I understand, that's what he does. He carries $500,000, or has one of his attaché, I should say, carry $500,000 in cash. You never know when you've got to buy something. You've got to make a big wager. Floyd Mayweather listen, he's not like one of those sharp gamblers. He doesn't go out there to look for lines that are moving all over the place or try to find games that, some other sharp handicapper isn't finding. Floyd Mayweather just piles on to favorites. And if he knows that, you've got a game and the favorite, you got to bet $1 million to win 100,000. He's like, yeah, I'll bet $1 million to win 100,000. It's free money. I'll put it out there. You have to have the million to win the 100,000.
Right.
But Floyd does a lot of that, man. A lot of it.
What I always appreciated about Floyd is even though he has a guy that carries around $500,000 in cash and has 3 Bugattis, he still goes to a pawn shop to look for a good deal. You got to respect that. You go in and buy a $5,000 watch that maybe would have cost $10,000 somewhere else, even though he clearly could afford the $10,000 watch.
Well, anybody that buys a lot of jewelry will know that you don't go to Zales, you don't go to the mall. That's a sucker's bet. It really is. And I don't want to be, I don't want to be the one to burst your bubble, but if you paid $5,000 for your wife's wedding ring and you got it at Zales, you got a $1,200 wedding ring. Okay. That's what you got. You got a $1,200 wedding ring. And so there's really no sense in going outside. Now, Michael Mack in Max Pawn in Las Vegas, this is not an ordinary pawn shop. Okay. It's not. The Vegas Golden Knights do a lot of different events over there. Michael was a great sponsor of our programs in Vegas for many, many years. And his pawn shop is what you would basically see on Rodeo Drive. Okay. They had Frank Sinatra's fucking shoes in there, for Christ's sake. And he wasn't selling them, right? That's not a for sale thing. No, they're just Frank Sinatra's shoes, which, by the way, a very surprising size 7. Frank Sinatra's shoe fit like in my hand. It was like the Burger King hand. He had a size 7 shoe.
I did not know that.
He's a small guy.
Yeah, very small guy. Huh. Good to know.
Yeah, and as we've known from G.I. Joe, knowing's half the battle. Speaking of kids, Bailey Kale's not a kid, but he's still younger than us. And I do wonder if 8:30 American time in the Central Time Zone was a little too early for Bailey. We tweeted to him. We've texted at him. Look, we'll get Bailey on. We've been playing some of his music, though, Chad, and it's great. I mean, it really is. Bailey Kale's music is great. This kid was a huge star at Central High School, played alongside Kobe King, who, Chad, you might have heard Kobe King's name. He went to the University of Wisconsin and left Wisconsin, went to Iowa State for a cup of coffee, and I think now he plays there's some other small Division I college, but I think he still plays there. Anyhow, Bailey Kale and Kobe King led the Central at that time, Red Raiders, to their first gold ball, a state championship in nearly 100 years. The kid just became a massive star here in the area, played some college ball at Whitewater, which is a rivalry of the University of Wisconsin lacrosses, and now back in town and really making some strides in music. So if we don't get a chance to chat with Bailey this morning, no big deal. Go to Spotify and look up Bailey Kale. I guarantee you're going to like this dude. And we've got, like I've said, a number of his tracks that we're kind of sprinkling into the program.
Well, I want to play this because, I was running across his SoundCloud page and I found some great tracks, his original stuff, but he did a remake of a Michael Jackson track, which I love, which is Rock With You. And you got to check this out, because to be able to get anywhere close to the register of Michael Jackson means that you probably have crushed your balls in a vice.
Explain how you make me feel. Sometimes I can't say it, so I gotta sing it. Just know.
I mean, listen to that. That's pretty solid,
dude. It's great.
Now, one may ask, why are we playing the music of a guy that just stiffed us on an interview? Well, because that's the kind of guys we are.
Yeah, thank you. That's the kind of guys we are. And hey, I see Mike Garcia checking in. Land Home Financials, Mike Garcia. Valparaiso. Thank you. Valpo. So Kobe King. I was like, where did Kobe go to play his ball? Valpo. So he's at Valpo,
Indiana, right? Valpo's in Indiana, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the head coach of Valpo, I think, used to have ties or was perhaps an assistant coach at the Wisconsin Badger program, or maybe there was a couple of players that transferred from Wisconsin and went to Valpo. To be fair, Valparaiso is not a team that I've ever watched. I looked at some of his Kobe King statistics the first couple of games that he played there, and he was doing okay, but it's just not a team that I've watched. I don't even know what conference they're in. I'm not sure where their television, games are broadcast. I know the Big Ten network is what I watch a lot of, but Valparaiso, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, occasionally you see them in the tournament, though. Valpo, Ball State, a lot of those small Indiana schools. It's always good to see those guys around the tournament. But yeah, if you're not like dialed into them, you're not going to know exactly where they're from or why. You're just like, oh, who's this team? Valpo. What does that sound like? A dog food? No, it's not. It's an actual college.
Valpo. Get it at your local grocer today. What's it made with? Don't ask. It's Valpo. Yeah, that does sound like something, doesn't it?
My dog loves that, by the way. He likes the wet version. He likes the wet version, not the dry version. I don't know why.
Oh, I like that. Oh, you know why? Because Valpo was actually, this is now, I'm remembering back to one of the things that we produced years ago. Valpo is a precursor to Soylent Green.
Soylent Green, yes.
Which the ironic part of that, the first guy to ever be fed his own foot stew green.
I don't know if you know this, but that movie was set in guess what year? 2022.
Don't tell me that.
So we still have a little bit left in 2022. We may find out we've been eating people this whole time. We don't even know.
Well, all right, listen, and this is why, and I'm not going to throw any fast food places under the bus. Okay, I'm not going to. But this is why for a majority of my meals, if I'm going to eat meals out, I tend to go to places where I know the cooks, I know the servers, I know the owners, sort of like the Recovery Room Bar and Grill. Chat, the Recovery Room is one of these places when you come out here for a vacation at some point, because we'll get you out here for, a week or two. The Recovery Room is in a neighborhood, and it's right down the street from Viterbo College. So it's like a great little neighborhood bar, 5-star dining. I mean, like the owner, Matt, he went out of his way before they set this menu to hire a guy that was like the head chef at a fancy restaurant came up with their stuff, and it's awesome.
Well, I don't know if anybody can tell, but Chad likes to eat and speak in the third person. So I'm sure I would enjoy it thoroughly.
You would.
Yeah.
You would.
From what I hear, it's fat guy friendly, which is always nice.
It's everybody friendly. That's why I like the recovery room. It's everybody friendly. Morning Woods popping back up this morning, said Aaron Charles Rodgers isn't going anywhere. He is very calculated, Chad. He won't want to retire. And this is an interesting take. He won't want to retire the same year that Brady does. He wants that Hall of Fame all to himself. This info was probably made up by Zach Wilson's mom. Zach Wilson's mom's got some friends that need to start watching the show.
Morning Wood, I don't know why you have such a thing for Zach Wilson, but that's like the third comment this week about Zach Wilson and Zach Wilson's mom. So
you don't know about that situation?
Oh, I know about it. I'm just saying he seems a little fixated on it.
Yeah, because I mean,
hard on for it, if you will.
Oh man, it's just like hard as Morning Wood. But to Kyle Morning Wood's point here, Chadwick, the idea that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers would share the Hall of Fame enshrinement stage is probably reason enough. I actually tend to agree with that. That is probably reason enough for Aaron Charles Rodgers, the third Esquire PhMD, to not retire at the same time as Tom Brady, which are we sure that Tom's going to retire? Because it doesn't seem like that's necessarily a foregone conclusion at this point. I'm starting to read a lot of stuff about Tom Brady from his friends that say that they're even pissed off with how he has treated Giselle and the family over these last couple of years. First of all, going to Tampa Bay, you win the Super Bowl, pack that shit up. That place looks like Disneyland on acid, right? Like you need to just, I was surprised that he went to a place with a toy ship that was sitting out in the, at the 50-yard line, but you win the Super Bowl, go home, right? Like where do you go from there?
I don't understand why he didn't walk off there. I actually thought it was a mistake for him to go to Tampa Bay. And of course I was wrong. And then they win the Super Bowl. And then I had to concede that, yes, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time, knocking Joe Montana off of my, list. And he is. You can't argue it. But at some point, he's got to give it up, right? But is it going to be this year? Who knows?
I don't know. And I would be willing to say that in light of marital trouble, if that is in fact, because I don't know what these reports are. And personally, I don't care what athletes do with their personal lives. That's not really germane to our discussion for the most part, unless it becomes like with Brett Favre, a situation that's so public and so egregious that it requires reporting on it. Like, I don't really care what your marital life is like, but I will say just from a human level and from a man's perspective, when you go through marital troubles like this and say you do get divorced, the first thing that you want to do is not leave the only thing that you have been doing for the last 25 years that gives you any sort of satisfaction and can take your mind away from all of what you are now losing, your wife, your children, half of your fortune, things of that nature. You want something to distract you.
Didn't he sign a huge TV deal, though? Isn't he going to be like the new TV guy and he signed for millions?
Speculation. I don't know. I can't confirm or deny that.
I hate to say it. I mean, I have a feeling he's going to have a place to land. I think he's going to be just fine. I think he'll be more like Peyton Manning. He'll have his or like Charles Barkley. As good as their career is on the field, it may even be better off in a lot of ways. That could be Tom Brady's fate. He's just possible, guys,
Yeah, but I don't know, because Tom Brady reminds me a lot more of Michael Jordan than he does Peyton Manning. And that's not to say that that's a bad comp there. Michael Jordan is, one of the first, he's the only black majority owner of a professional team in the world. Okay, wrap your mind around that. Michael Jordan is the only black majority owner of a professional franchise of sports in the world. I think Tom Brady might be more like that. I don't know his competitive nature, Chad, if it would allow him to peel back enough to go have that kind of fun. That's what I just really don't know about.
Yes.
Some people are just really type A. He looks like a guy that will go on to, continue to develop that line of TB12, whatever that is, the nutrition supplements and his old body line, as opposed to going to sit on a couch. Look, let me throw this up here because I know that we're kind of running up against it. This has been a real fun Friday. And we've got Packers football on Sunday versus the Jets. Jets. Who knows, Morning Wood? Maybe Zach Wilson's mom will be in attendance at Lambeau Field. That'd give you a reason to go to the game this weekend for sure. Let's talk a little NBA basketball, though, real quick, Chad. I want to do this. The NBA season, the Milwaukee Bucks are coming back, and we both think the Milwaukee Bucks have a great chance to overtake a lot of the teams in the East, possibly represent the East, and potentially even win the NBA championship. But the reigning champion Golden State Warriors are going to have something to say about that. Klay Thompson feels like he's back and healthier than he's been in years. Steph Curry is still if not an MVP candidate, near an MVP candidate. Jordan Poole is coming on. James Wiseman's coming on. But Draymond Green, one of the big three or the big four of that Golden State Warrior dynasty, and Jordan Poole have recently come into a real bad way. And this is what Steve Kerr calls, quote, the toughest situation that he has had to deal with in his career as the head coach of the Golden State Warriors. For those that don't know, Draymond Green and Jordan Poole got into a fight at a Warriors practice over a week ago. Apparently, the video shows Jordan Poole, Draymond Green having a discussion. Draymond Green kind of getting in Jordan Poole's face. Jordan Poole pushes Draymond Green away from him, and Draymond Green cold cocks this guy. All right. And these are big men. When we see, basketball players standing next to each other, Chad, it looks like they're all about the same because they are. These are 6'7", 6'8", 250, 60-pound men. Rudy Tomjanovich, who was the coach of the Rockets, nearly got killed by Kermit Washington. I mean, this is not a joke. Nearly got killed by Kermit Washington when he sucker punched him in an NBA game, the Rockets versus what was that, the Clippers back in the 70s. The point of this is serious. These are huge, huge men. And when you punch somebody, it can have an absolute devastating effect on not just your body, but then team chemistry. I don't know if we've got that graphic. Draymond says it's not going to affect the team chemistry. Kevin Durant has recently checked in and said that he doesn't feel like it'll affect the team's chemistry. And my take on this, Chad, is simply this. I don't believe that it will either, because if the Warriors have to, they'll move on from Draymond Green before they let that ruin their chances of having another shot at a title. I do believe that. What's your thoughts on that? Because I know that Draymond is a central player to this team, but I don't think that team, the Golden State Warriors, needs him as desperately now as they might have when their dynasty was first starting, because he's not the same player anymore.
Yeah, their farm club, I'll tell you what, they've done an amazing job when it comes to signing guys and developing guys. And James Wiseman's a guy that comes to mind. Obviously, we're talking about Jordan Poole. Jordan Poole is great. Andrew Wiggins. But yeah, the thing about Draymond, he obviously kind of slid a little bit in the playoffs last year. He wasn't quite the player that he was, but he is kind of that guy, that glue that holds it together. He is the spark. What I was reading is that both Poole and Green are up for possible contract extensions, and that might be a factor, possibly, of why there's a little bit of tension. Draymond says no, it has nothing to do with that. He's having personal issues. He took it on the court. But clearly, if you watch the video, that was way out of hand. He went too far. But everybody says it's cool, including Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant says they'll be fine. It ain't no thing. So I guess we'll see. But there's definitely something there.
Yeah, there's definitely something there. The entire article, which you can read on a number of different platforms, and I shouldn't say the entire article, but the entire story is found on multiple platforms in many articles. But essentially what I was able to digest and boil down from what I've read recently is this. Steve Kerr, Jordan Poole, the Warriors brass, Draymond Green have been in conversations with each other, multiple conversations over the last week and a half, trying to figure out, is there a pathway forward? So far right now, and I saw Draymond giving a press conference the other day, so far right now, it feels like these guys are going to be able to say, okay, we're going to get this ready to go, and we'll go start the NBA season. However, I still reserve the right to say this. The Golden State Warriors, if they see this season not go exactly the way that they want to, they'll pull the plug on one of these guys, and I don't think it's Jordan Poole. I really don't. I know that Draymond's a long-time, Warrior. He's a loyal guy, somebody that the Warriors franchise will end up retiring his number for. If they have to make a decision, he's out of there.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? He's got other stuff on his plate. He's trying to start his own media empire, as you know, and he hates the mainstream media, and he's constantly going after them. So that'll be interesting. But, you mentioned something in an email to me yesterday that I thought would be kind of cool. Would be, let's say that he does let's say he goes, Draymond Green we're talking about, to the Lakers or the Bucks or to the Heat. All three of those teams are intriguing to me for a guy like Draymond to be plugged into that situation.
Absolutely. Draymond Green is a championship type player, and on the right team, Miami team, Milwaukee team. I even said the Atlanta Hawks might be a team that would be interested in him as well, because they're kind of at that level. You want to, if you're a team like the Bucks, the Heat, the Hawks, I would even say the Nets, but I think they're just way too dysfunctional for that to be really considered. But if you're one of those teams, you look at a guy like Draymond Green, if in fact the Warriors move off of him, as the missing piece to your championship prospects. That's the way that I see that.
Give a little to your team.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's go away for 30 more seconds. We'll come back. Let's talk some more Packers, Jets football, get ourselves ready for the Eagles and the Eau Claire Blue Golds. You're listening to and watching the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
Now back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival. You know that old saying, it's not if you win or lose, but how you play the game. That does not apply to gambling, by the way.
No, it doesn't.
It's only if you win. If you lose, it sucks, and you don't talk about it. Good gamblers never talk about their losses.
Not really.
About your wins. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
Holy shit, that was great. I'm Dave Carney, and there's no better way to follow this up with a gambling take than this. We were right as rain, as right as could be about last night's just absolutely awful Thursday night football game. Chad, we weren't right about necessarily the Bears, even though they should have won that game. The final play, that final drive, they should have won. But we were very, very strong in this take. Under. Whatever the number was, go under. They could have had the total at 25, and I would have told you to take the under. Boy, Carson Wentz is awful. 12 for 22, 99 yards. Justin Fields, I feel bad for this kid because I know that there are a lot of Bear fans that look for anything, a sign of life, a sign of potential, that their quarterback is going to be a quarterback. A Bears quarterback has never thrown for 4,000 yards in a season, ever. That's never happened.
Amazing.
It's crazy when you think about where the NFL has gone. But after the game, Justin Fields said, man, I'm tired of almost being there. I want to get there. Well, guys, you probably have the wrong coach. You probably have the wrong team. I don't know. It's a real mess in Chicago right now. I felt bad for our good buddy Rob Dog here in Stoddard, who is the host of the Rob Dog Sports Brief, by the way. He's a Bear fan for some reason, and these guys just will never get out of his way. They just never will. They're going to be awful for forever.
Hey, Foreman's checking in, and he says, I talk about my wife all the time, and that was a huge gamble that I lost.
Oh, you didn't lose that one. I think she lost that bet. I think Foreman nailed that one. I think Ashley might have lost that one. Well, Foreman, I tell you what, Ashley did win in this. You gave her two good-looking kids. So there is that. Foreman, Chad, is one of these guys that has like an ironic set of genes. So he's our height, right? He is often looking like my favorite homeless friend. Like when people see us out together, literally he's had a cup and they've put quarters in it. It was fucking weird. But Foreman's got a son, Trenton, who used to dunk like 6'9", dunk. And this guy's 5'10", 5'11". And he's got a 6'9" son. He's got other kids that are like gorgeous, like little models. And I'm like, this is the most interesting DNA I have ever seen. It doesn't show up on him. But once he spreads that, it begins to matriculate out. So,
not to accuse anything, but are we sure they're all his kids?
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Not to make a NASCAR reference, but I see that Neil Duda did that. Was there a Dick Trickle in the house?
Well, hey, I wanted to leave Keith Knight up here because you know what? We'll take criticism as well. Keith Knight says you guys are all over the place. Can you talk more about Brett Favre ripped off the welfare recipients? Well, we kind of covered that yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And Keith,
we're ADD. We can't help it.
Yeah, and it's an hour show, Keith, which is also interesting. And a guest bails at 8:30, so you kind of you go through this thing that's called real-time readjustment, which is fine. We had anticipated talking to Bailey Kale. We didn't get to talk to Bailey Kale. So, Keith, we'll do this. Let me put up that graphic, if you would, Chad. Well, let's have you put up that graphic because I want to preview the Jets and the Packers coming up. And then while we've got that up there, we'll go back to that Brett Favre situation. So, Keith, we went into this yesterday, and you can check out yesterday's episode of the Sports Carnival on our YouTube page. It's up there for prosperity. Brett Favre right now, and we don't know for sure exactly what role he played in this other than from the text messages, from the articles that we are seeing now. His role was to be sort of an intermediary between a former governor of the state of Mississippi and the university where Brett Favre went and played his football, and his daughter now attends and is, I guess, a volleyball player, and some of the funds that Brett Favre was trying to get over to his former alma mater. Here's the deal. Brett Favre knew full well what he was getting himself involved in. Did he start this welfare fraud scam? No. But was he one of the principal players in this to help this money get funneled to his former alma mater? Yes. Was Brett Favre also aware and concerned about how this might look for him if people like us found out about it? You betcha. Which is why it looks like Brett Favre is a real piece of shit this morning. I mean, that's why it looks like that.
Well, he's the biggest name involved, so of course he's going to take a lot of the brunt as well. But it does appear that he was definitely involved because of the text messages and things of that nature, and we'll see how this fleshes out.
Yeah, we'll see how it fleshes out. Danny B checking in here this morning. Danny, thank you for the kind words, brother. What's up with the sunglasses, dude? My eyes are crazy. Like, I have a hard time sitting still behind this microphone, which is why we never did a camera version of the show in lacrosse, because I couldn't have done it without Chad. So my eyes are nuts, Danny. That's the reason why. All right, let's wrap up because we've got a lot. We've got a lot that we've been hitting on this morning. And thank you for being able to stay with us. The Sports Carnival is not necessarily a linear show. It's a carnival. It takes twists. It takes turns.
It's a big tent of shit is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I mean that in a good way.
Okay, the Jets and Packers, Chad, Sunday, 12 o'clock Central Time, Fox. That'll be 10 o'clock in the morning out where you are. Currently has the Packers. It said the opening line was Packers by 7, according to multiple spots. I've seen the Packers anywhere from 5.5 to 4.5 point favorites, depending on where you're shopping this, so shop around. Against the spread this year, Packers are just 2-3. Jets are 3-2. Last time these two teams met was back in 2018. An interestingly close game, 44-38, Chad. Packers ended up beating the Jets in OT. Now, of course, they're in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. Last week, the Jets beat the Dolphins 40-17. That was a surprise, but there was no Tua. And Teddy Bridgewater got knocked out and concussed in that game, which I don't think the outcome would have been like that had Teddy actually played. We know, of course, what happened with Green Bay against the New York Football Giants, and we obviously want to see something quite different. With Aaron Rodgers having a bit of a thumb issue, at least that's what we see on the injury report this week, Chad. I'm going to hope that we see a big helping of A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. I need to see this football get really pounded into the ground, especially against the New York team, who, look, isn't playing terrible football this year. They've been better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, definitely. They need a balanced attack. Now, Aaron Rodgers does have a thumb issue. I think you mentioned that. And Jordan Love was taking some snaps, I think, yesterday. It looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to start. But I mean, it's a little early in the season to say this, but do we kind of see this as almost a must win for them? I mean, it's going down the wrong road if they don't, correct?
Yeah, I don't see it yet because we're here. This is week 6. The Packers are 3-2. I don't see it as a must win. What I think that it does, if Green Bay doesn't win this game, Chad, they're at home. They're against a second-year head coach in Robert Saleh, a guy that for the San Francisco 49ers was known to give the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers fits. What I think it will say is that not the season's over or that it's a must win, but the Packers have a lot more to work on than they thought they did. Because the presumptive nature of this season coming into it, Aaron Rodgers' consecutive MVP trophies, again, 4 in his career, is that it's just picking up where we left off last year. And that's something that I've never fully understood because everybody gets a year older, right? Like, so how could it be quite the same as it was last year when you're on the other arc of trajectory? Now, if he was 25, 26, 27,
sure,
completely understand. But I've never really been able to buy into that fact that every year you get older and now you're approaching your 40s, that all of a sudden we should presume that you're going to be another league MVP and the team would be a Super Bowl contender.
Right.
The Packers, I don't think, are in a must win, but I do think if they lose this game to the Jets, a lot of soul searching, man. A lot of soul searching.
Well, and I think the other thing is as you get older, I think this is why you see a lot of clamoring for more quote unquote weapons. You hear more about that. And we talked a little bit about Odell Beckham Jr., obviously them losing Devontae Adams. But as he gets older, needing some other guys to help out because he doesn't have quite the zip that he did. Maybe throws the ball not quite exactly where it should be. And you got a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. that can just pull it out of the air anywhere. So I think that's part of that as well. But yeah, I guess it's not a must win, but I think it's for Packer fans. I hope they win. And if they don't win, I'm going to be pissed and it's going to ruin the rest of my week. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
It's going to color our broadcast completely differently next week. If the Green Bay Packers lose to the Jets on Sunday, this will color our broadcast completely differently next week. I again want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram. Really appreciate you. If you're an Eagles fan, a UWL Eagles fan, make the trip up to Eau Claire on Saturday. I'm going to be there. The game is going to kick off at 11:30 a.m. It'll be televised here in Western Wisconsin, but I encourage you to go up there and support your Eagles. I will be in attendance. For Chad Forster and myself, Dave Carney, this has been the Sports Carnival here on a Friday. Have a great weekend, Chad. Let's hope the Packers don't lose, and we'll get into it all again on Monday morning, man. See ya.
Oh, yeah, Mariners suck, by the way.
Oh, yeah.